Welcome to the New Money Habits Podcast, where we talk about how to create a better plan for your money so you don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. Here are your hosts, Sarah Jones and Nino Villa.
Welcome back, budgeteers. Coach Nino Villa here. Alongside me, my partner on the airways, Sarah Jones. Sarah, where are you tuning in from this episode?
This episode, I am in a really beautiful location. We are in Hernando Point, Mississippi, right on the Arcabultla, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, please correct me, but lake. It really is beautiful here.
Yeah, you sent me a picture earlier, and I must say, as the kids say these days, I'm jelly. I'm jelly.
Yes.
The picture of the lake looked absolutely beautiful. It looked very peaceful. And hopefully I know you said that area of the country gets a ton of rain, but hopefully the rain has held out a little bit and you've gotten to enjoy the sunshine.
It is sunny today, and we are in here recording.
Okay, that's my cue for pick it up, Nino. We got to get through this episode.
I know. I'm missing my sunshine. No, I'm totally kidding. It has been a little. We've only been here a couple of days. It is beautiful and sunny today, and it's supposed to be for the next several days that we're here. So, definitely looking forward to that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for making the time for me and for our listeners. I know that they appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I think we have another good one in store for our listeners today. I know when we were wrapping up one of our recording sessions recently, we got talking about ideas for other episodes, and it just dawned on me that, with the state of the economy and things happening with like mortgage rates and whatnot, like we were all very fond of like really low interest rates, and it just kind of brought up this question that's kind of out there in the financial landscape about like whether or not to pay off a home mortgage early or should you invest. And so I know that you and I both have some thoughts around this topic, but I know it's also one where in some circles you don't do anything of any sort until you do this other thing first. And so how dare you invest before you have your house paid off or something of that nature? So we wanted to talk about it today. We wanted to talk about like the pros and the cons, as our listeners are probably more familiar with nowadays than ever. We like to meet our clients where they are, and every financial situation is different. And so sometimes paying off the house early is the right thing to do. And sometimes paying the house off early is not necessary in that particular situation. So I think we wanted to talk about it today and kind of investigate some of the pros and cons.
And I love that and I love I think I say this every single episode, but I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have because, and I would even take it just a step farther that I have seen, because and I'll use the word follow, and I'm going to air quote around follow social media and a lot of financial gurus, a lot of people that are showing how great it is to be debt free. And you know what? I'm one of them. I do not have a mortgage or anything. I'm 100% debt free. But I find out in a lot of the financial arena that people also tend to, at least I get the vibes that you are not debt free or you're not maybe as well off if you still have a mortgage. Like there's still this piece that I feel like in the financial industry that people kind of look down upon those that still have a mortgage. And I want to put kind of I'll put an X through that you can still be really great with money. You can have a lot of things set in your future and still have a mortgage, and it's okay. Like you don't have to get to that point of being mortgage free also before you've hit this this status, I'll say, of being financially secure and wealthy. And I think we put a lot of high praise on people that are mortgage free as well. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be that way. So I'm excited to have this conversation just to kind of maybe blow out some of those and blow away some of those negative feelings and negative conversations around you have to pay off your mortgage before you're financially secure.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because, as somebody who kind of started down his own new money habits path back in 2012, one of the first things I wanted to do is I wanted to eliminate all of my consumer debt. And I was really, really excited about the idea of paying off my house early. Eventually, I did refinance from a 30-year down to a 15-year mortgage. I got a better interest rate. My payment did not go up by much, but I also shaved 8 years off because I was still like 22 years left on the original mortgage or whatever. And so I was somebody who was really, really excited about that until I had a conversation with a client not all that long ago. Maybe it's been about a year now. But when I had this conversation with a client, and I'm going to share the story here in just a minute, it really opened my eyes to let's really look at the whole picture, the full picture. Let's look at timeline. Let's look at dollars. Let's look at financial goals, not just the financial goal of wanting to pay off the house, but what other financial goals exist. Now, if I had this conversation with this particular couple and their only goal was we want to pay off the house, well, then, of course, that is what we are going to work to do. Mm-hmm. That was not the only goal that this particular couple has. And so as we started to look at it, here are some of the numbers. We're talking about a $400,000 mortgage that they had just refinanced to a 15-year with a 1.75 interest rate. So like I said, this must have been like a year ago because we know those interest rates are long gone, not to be seen again anytime soon. Mm-hmm. But so they refinanced, and one of the things they started talking about is they're like, we have this $500 extra a month that we want to start putting down on the mortgage to pay it off early. I said, great, let's look at the timeline and the dollars associated with that, because I know you guys have some other things that you want to do, and I just want to make sure that you're making an informed decision here. So when I pulled up my trusty calculator and started crunching the numbers, putting an extra $500 towards their monthly mortgage payment was going to reduce the amount of time that they were in debt for their mortgage from 15 years down to about 12 years, 3 months. Mm. So they were going to shave just about 3 years off, which, okay, but let's focus on the other side of that equation for just a second. Yes, they would shave off about 3 years, but they were still going to be in debt for the next 12. That wasn't going to change. So the next part of what I wanted them to look at is, now let's look at the numbers. How much money would you be saving by parting with this $500 every month, which is $6,000 a year, which could be used for other things? Let's just kind of take a look. So when we crunch the numbers, they're going to save about $10,000 in interest. Now, $10,000 is a lot of money. We're also talking about a $400,000 mortgage, though. Mm-hmm. So in comparison, that $10,000 is not overly significant. If it was $10,000 of a $100,000 mortgage, that would be incredibly significant.
Right.
It's a little less significant. So the question I posed to them, as I said, I know you have these other financial goals. You're trying to invest in other properties. You want to make sure that your daughter graduates college debt free. You got some other things going on. Is saving 2 years, 9 months, and $10,000 worth parting ways with? Well, let's take 6,000. Let's multiply that by 12. And if my math serves me right, we're talking about somewhere around $72,000.
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
Right. $6,000 a year, 10 years would be 60,000, add another 12. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So 72. Do you want to part ways with $72,000 that could potentially help you do these other things in order to save 10 and 2 years and 9 months when you're going to be in debt for the next 12 anyway? And when they heard it that way, when we took the time to crunch the numbers, they're like, whoa, hold the phone. No. There's some other things we could be doing with this money. And especially with such a low interest rate, even if they just sucked it into a high yield savings account, getting 3 or 4%, they would be out earning the money that they're paying. So that's not what they wanted to do with it. But I just wanted to use that to kind of illustrate the point to its conclusion that there are other things that they decided they wanted to do with that $500 that they think is going to help them earn a heck of a lot more than the $10,000 they're saving.
And I love that, Nino, because it's really looking at the true, call it opportunity cost, as our good friend Mike always says. Right? Like, what is the opportunity cost here? And I think sometimes we just get it in our heads that, again, that's kind of what's put out there, that, hey, next thing you need to do is pay off your mortgage. And it's wise to look at all of the options and just run some scenarios, right? Because I think sometimes we can get to the same point, maybe not necessarily no matter what we do, right? There might be a couple of different paths that we can take and still end up kind of at the same point. And sometimes we might not end up at that same point, or it's going to take us kind of the long way around, right? And so how can we get to what it is that we're truly working on, and what is, and I was just going to say what's really important to you. I think that that's valid, but also, as I'll throw in Maria too, because she says, who are you trying to become, right? And it's really important to mention is, how does this really benefit us, right? Does paying my mortgage off really benefit me? And if so, how? How long does that take? What is the opportunity cost? What are we having to put on the back burner while we focus on the mortgage? What are some other things that we can do? And one thing that I ask clients a lot is, how long are you planning on staying in your home?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, let's just ask the question, how long are you planning on? And while some people might not necessarily, they're not going to say, 6 years, 8 months, and 15 days, right? But I know for me, I knew the homes that I had, they weren't forever homes for me. I knew that they were going to be there for a period of time. I was going to live there, but I knew that I wasn't going to be staying there for the rest of my life. And so for us in general, it just didn't make sense to be putting the extra money towards our mortgage, knowing that we weren't going to be there forever. And so I want to use those dollars for something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good, important reminder that for every dollar that we have, we can only give it a single assignment. Mm-hmm. And so if we allocate an extra dollar towards paying the house down, then that dollar can't go and buy us another asset or do something different. And so I think I love that question about, like, how long are you going to continue to be in the house? It's not one that early on in my coaching I would ask. Everything was, we're going to pay off the house early if we were at like that step of the program, read between the lines. And so what I realized is, that's a really good question to ask, because to your point, if you're allocating extra dollars now, yeah, it's a forced savings account is the big, right? Like, it's a forced savings account. You're going to get that money back when you sell. Yeah, but you're also missing out on opportunities that you could take advantage of today because you don't have those dollars available for other opportunities. And so there was another point that I was going to make about that, but I lost it. So,
well, and I'll even say to that point that I think people I think it's a general rule that when you pay off or you put more down on your monthly mortgage payments, that when you go to sell it, you've paid down the principal, that you'll get maybe a bigger check, right? Because you'll have more equity in it. And, I would say real estate is a little bit volatile, that I don't necessarily ever bank on that. Because you might not get more equity out of it just because you're paying down the principal. We have no idea what the housing market is going to do. I have no idea if I'm putting more down on my monthly mortgage payment, paying extra each month to try and, get more of the principal paid down so I can sell it in 5 years, thinking that I'm going to recoup all of that, because I have no idea what the market's going to look like in 5 years. And there's a very likely possibility that I will not, right? And so did it necessarily benefit me? And that could be said with either or, any scenario, but that's not a scenario that I bank on. I don't base my decisions on that, because I have no idea what the housing market's going to do.
Yeah, I'm grateful you brought that up too. I mean, obviously with recent history, like 2007, 2008 through 2012, we saw a large correction in the housing market. And I think a lot of us kind of expect it to happen again, although it hasn't. And so we're like, maybe it won't. But to your point, you just never know. You never know. The people who were buying houses in 2006, 2007, do you think that they thought that they were going to turn around and lose 67% of the value? I mean, I remember friends of mine buying either townhouses, condos, small single detached, first family starter homes. And each one of them lost like 2/3 of the value and had to short sell them for that. And so imagine if you were sinking all of this extra money into the mortgage only to turn around and sell your house for 1/3 of what you kind of paid into it. Like, what a tremendous loss. Right. The other part of this conversation that I love to just stare at and help my clients really like peel back is that timeline element. The timeline element. Like, all these extra payments, what is it really going to get you? Now, when you're getting out of consumer debt and you're paying off a credit card with like a $5,000 balance and you're throwing an extra $500 at it every month, well, now you're out of that credit card in under 10 months. And I'm gonna cheerlead you all the way across that finish line. Because the timeline is reasonable and it's exciting and there's a lot of momentum. When the timeline is you're going to go from being in debt for the next 15 years to being in debt for the next 12, and you're going to miss out on a ton of opportunity in between, I can't get behind that. I can't cheerlead you for 12 years because the timeline matters.
Right. And even to that point, I was having a conversation with a client the other night, and we were talking about, and I won't dig real deep into his stuff, but he has an investment property that is just undergoing some maintenance, and the rent that he's going to be collecting is increasing. And he said, Sarah, I think I just want to put that towards my mortgage now. And we're looking at about $2,000 a month. The investment property is paid off. It does not have a mortgage on it. His home that he lives in does. And, Nino, we started talking, and he has 2 kids. One is 14. So we're looking, 6 years, 7 years isn't that far away, right? From finishing high school, the possibility of going into, college or trade school, going to be driving, these major events are going to be happening, right? And I said, well, how about we just take a look at, because one of his goals was he wanted to be able to save for his kids to go to college. Well, so here's here's what we can look at. You can put that extra $2,000 a month to your mortgage and get it paid off. And we didn't even get too deep into the numbers. We ran some, I said, or, another option is you could start a college fund.
Mm-hmm.
You could start another investment account. Look at what could happen, right? These are your options. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I really like that, right? Because he hadn't thought of it. He just thought he was going to put that money towards his mortgage. And when we're looking at that, a mortgage of, now it is on a 15-year loan, his mortgage, but his kids are going to be going to school sooner than 15 years, right? And so talking about the opportunity cost and what is he going to feel better about, what could he accomplish? Yeah, he could maybe pay the house off early. That significantly cuts down on the time that he will have to contribute to college accounts, right? And college funds. And so it really is about just talking through some of the scenarios to see what are you able to do. And I'll use the word trade-off as well, right? Because when you say yes to one thing, you're also saying no to something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so looking at, it's okay to say yes to something, but then also making sure that you understand what you're saying no to and making sure that you're okay with that, at least for right now, right? It's not a permanent, but just knowing all the scenarios and what feels good for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And again, so important to be thinking about what are all of the financial goals. Mm-hmm. So I have another, I don't even really want to call this one a client, like my best friend, but he comes to me for some financial advice from time to time. And, his situation is completely different. Here's somebody whose timeline shifts about the same amount. He too wants to know, should I pay off my mortgage early? And he's telling me his numbers, and he can save himself about 3 years, actually almost 4 years. He can shave almost 4 years off, but he only has another 7 to go. So that's half the time.
Wow.
And he just became eligible for retirement. And so he's like, wait a minute, you're telling me in 4 years, like I could have my house paid off, I could retire and just live off of my retirement check? I'm like, yeah, you could. So his situation is completely different. He's not in a position where he could really live off the retirement check today. Like maybe he could make that happen, but it'd be a little bit of a struggle. So he continues to work so that he can, because his focus became, I want to pay this house off. He knows he's not going anywhere anytime soon, because then when he has no mortgage, he can actually afford to live off of just his retirement, and he can just, and he's 44 years old.
Wow.
So it's not like it, we're not talking about a 65, like he can retire 20 years earlier than most people because he's done it right. And so while I'm telling one client, don't even do that, you're missing out on opportunities because I know what their financial goals are. I'm advising somebody else to do something exactly the opposite because, what? Personal finances are personal?
There's not just like these goals, these checklists, like do this and then move on to this, and that we can do things differently? How dare you say those things, Nino?
I'm sorry. Cookie cutter, right? Cookie cutter. We just put everybody through the exact same process and we treat everybody exactly the same.
Right. You know what? I think when you're talking to the masses, that's fine, but that's definitely not what I do when I'm talking with clients. And I'm really careful that, I put my own thoughts, what I would actually do. I might share with clients, if it were me, this might be the route that I take. If I were in your shoes, I might take this route. But what is it that you would want to do, right? What is it that you're really working towards? And it's not just today. We talk about the vision and we talk about the dream and we talk about, really the future. What is our future self going to say? Is our future self going to be happy that we made this choice? And I think it's just important to look at all the opportunities, all the options, and make a choice based on the information that you have today, right? And I think when you have more clarity in your situation. You've developed more confidence in yourself to make those choices, right? That it doesn't matter. We might get 3 years down the road and say, you know what? Now it's time for me to look at doing something a little bit different. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? These are not set in stone. Just because you make this choice today does not mean you have to stick with it, right? And so 3 years from now, life changes. You have the opportunities then to make a different choice based on what's going on then.
Yep. That's such another good, important reminder is that we make plans today and we might implement them, but that doesn't mean the plan can't change. That, as life goes on and things evolve, other things might come into the picture that never existed. Some things might exit the picture that currently exist. And so priorities are going to change, right? A 25-year-old who tells me right now that their number one priority is to buy a house, and so they're saving for a down payment, their plans might change 3 years down the road if all of a sudden they're engaged to be married and expecting their first child. They'll probably still want to buy the house, but they might need to stop along the way to, I don't know. I know when we got news of our first child, we were driving around in a pickup truck that my wife and I loved, but it had like a mini extended cab. There was no way we were getting a car seat in there. So things had changed, priorities had changed, and the Toyota Tacoma that we loved very, very much needed to go away so that we could have a more family-oriented vehicle that could actually carry our children in it. It's not that the Toyota wasn't going to be safe or anything like that. There just literally wasn't any room. So, things change, and so you make a plan, and you augment the plan when new information unfolds or new circumstances arise.
Well, and I think that, and I have definitely lived that over the past year just because we did not envision this life. This was not something that my husband and I said, yeah, we're going to do this when we're 42. Not what we had planned, right? But because we had developed habits, right? Because we knew we didn't know all the bits and pieces of our future, but we knew what we were trying to accomplish, and that was peace with our finances, right? It was setting ourselves up to handle situations as they came our way with a little bit more peace and clarity, right? And I'll say the only reason why we are able to be full-time RVers right now, Nino, is because we set ourselves up throughout the years to make this possible, right? We didn't set out to do this, but when the opportunity arose, talk about opportunity costs, right? The opportunity was here. It was presented, and we chose to take advantage of it, and we felt good about taking advantage of it because we had set ourselves up and knew that we could have purchased a home. I miss Arizona. I love Arizona. People ask me all the time as we've been traveling, they're like, where are you from? I said, well, frankly, I'm from Colorado, but I was meant to live my life in Arizona, so that's my home. And they look at me kind of funny. I said, no, seriously, I will live there at some day, at some point. It's just not today. And I don't want to get too sidetracked, but it's that opportunity that came up for us to be full-timers, and we were in a position to say, why not? Right? If we say yes to this, what are we then saying no to? It's not an easy decision. And also, it doesn't have to be this way forever. We may choose to not be full-time anymore, right? We may choose to buy a house, and we've set ourselves up to make that choice when it comes along also, right? And so talk about opportunity costs. If anybody's lived it recently, I mean, I'll say I have. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
I'm curious just because curiosity got the cat here. What did you end up saying no to? Like, can you articulate that? Like, you said yes to full-time RVing. What are some of the things that you had to say no to because you said yes to that?
One was a home in Arizona. We wanted to move to Arizona for about 11 years. And so it was in my heart, like, I said I will live there someday, and we worked and worked and worked to make it happen, and we get there, and then this opportunity comes up. So I had to say no for now. Wasn't a no forever, but a no for now, owning a home. The other thing that we said no to for right now is my husband working, because he worked outside of the home. And when we decided to go on the road, we're like, what are our options here? Right? He will tell you he is not necessarily an entrepreneur. He, that's for some people and it's not for others. And so we knew then, okay, Sarah, frankly, it's up to you. It's up to me to build my business so it would financially support us on the road, because we don't live off of savings, or we're not living. This is, just like if we had a house, right? We're working, our income comes in to pay our living expenses. It's no different for us here. We're not living off of what we sold our house for. We're not living off of that money. So those were two things. And, another thing that we said no to that kind of been weighing on me lately is routine. And a little bit of stability. This doesn't feel, you get up, you go to your normal gym, you go to your normal grocery store, you go home, or, you might go to work and then you come home to a home, and it's very routine like, and it's very, it feels very stable. And I bet we could have a whole nother conversation on this, because I think life, there's a lot of stabilities in life, but this has just thrown me personally into something that didn't feel very stable at first. It was scary. And routines are far and few between here. So those are some of the things that we've said no to for right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's incredible insight. I think I've told you that I toy with the idea that when the kids are old enough, the wife and I would like to do something similar, but we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. I talk a big game, and then it'll come time to, I don't know, like clear out the gray water or something, and I'll be like, yeah, no, this is not for me.
One day I'd love to share my whole story with you, Nino, because me here right now, if you knew my whole story, you would be completely amazed at, it's pretty incredible. And here's the thing, as a quick little side note, I think sometimes people think that when I'm speaking, I'm trying to scare people away from this lifestyle, and I'm really not, but I don't think it's a lifestyle that many people, and I'm learning that more as we talk to people that are full-timers. This is a very different life than many of us assume it's going to be. And there are a lot of challenges and a lot of things that many of us have not been prepared for. So I like to just be real with it and say, these are some things, right? When you're planning this life, which is amazing, but here's some challenges, and here's the other side of that, right? It's not just vacation all the time.
Yeah, so it sounds like it is work. And all the more reason for me to delay making that decision at any point too soon. Both the kids are still in grade school. The oldest hasn't even started high school yet. So we have some time to think it over. And, then I'll pick your brain at that point and say, all right, so how long could you stand it before it was like, enough is enough?
Right.
But no, I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah. Well, and I think it really does go back to those opportunity costs that we were talking about before, right? That when you get your sights set on just one thing, so if your sights are just set on paying the mortgage off, looking at the opportunity cost and what are the other options out there, and how can you set yourself up for handling those opportunities as they come along, right? And I think that this is a really good example. Your friend getting ready to, that has the ability to retire in a couple of years. Geez, that's I I would say a no-brainer almost, right? Like, yeah, let me go that path, right? And so I can be at least mostly retired by the time I'm 44. That would be amazing.
I know, right? I don't know what everybody else's definition of retirement is, but my definition of retirement is you work because you want to, not because you have to. And I wish I were in that position. I'm not there yet. But he is certainly in a position in as little as 3 years. He'll be working only because he wants to, not because he has to. And that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I'm working on that path myself. It is a need for us right now, but my husband doesn't, right? And so there's some of that opportunity cost, some of that, call it trade-off, call it what have you, kind of the best of multiple worlds right now. So, opportunity cost, I think something that we don't talk enough about.
Right. And the only way you can actually have that conversation is when you're looking at everything on the table, everything we've been talking about. It's what are your financial goals? If there's a singular one, then go after it. If there's multiple, let's look at, how is timeline affected? What are the actual dollars involved? All of those things I think are really important. And I know that I've shared on the past episodes about cash flowing and kind of derailing my debt elimination to put in a backyard, to remodel the first floor of the house. And, when I did those things, these are the things I looked at. I looked at the timeline. So by stopping and putting $10,000 to $15,000 into the backyard, how did it affect my overall timeline? I'm in debt for 6 months longer than I was going to originally be. Okay. And the same thing with the kitchen, or it was the first floor, but we were also just really kind of like mindful and thoughtful about what are some of the changes we wanted to make, because we didn't want to affect the timeline too much. We're willing to affect it a little bit. I didn't want to put a $200,000 kitchen in and then be in debt for 10 more years or whatever. So, you look at the timeline, you look at the dollars, you look at all of the goals, and you make an informed decision. And then you do the thing that you've talked about on previous episodes, and you don't make any justifications for it. You did it because that's what you wanted to do. And you don't have to justify yourself to anyone. I
love it. You don't. And I want people to stop doing that, right? I don't generally say that, but stop justifying. And I think it comes down to being clear on your path, right? Who you are trying to become, what are the goals that you're trying to reach, what is the life that you want to create, and being confident in your decisions. Being confident in when you make those choices that you are in alignment with those decisions, no matter what the outcome is, right? Because you've used all the information that you have today to make that decision. So I love it, Nino. I love it. I think that, and I've heard from a lot of people actually that have listened to this podcast, how beneficial, some of these real conversations have been, that they've picked up some things that they haven't thought of before. And so I just want to encourage our listeners to listen with an open mind and try and look at your situation from a different point of view, right? From a different vantage point, and just start thinking, not what can I do now, but what is it that I want to create? Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that too. It's great to hear that the podcast is making a difference in people's lives, and that it's getting them to think about their situation in a more personal way. And I want to encourage our listeners: you don't have to do this on your own. Go to the show notes, schedule some time with Sarah, schedule some time with myself, or any one of the New Money Habits coaches, and talk about your personal situation with somebody who has an objective point of view, who has no emotional ties to, this thing or that thing, and start to explore all the possibilities within your financial landscape. And, so go to the show notes, visit our website, newmoneyhabits.com, download our tools there. We have a free budgeting worksheet. We have other tools that will help you to calculate things like how much you should be spending on a house or what have you. But engage. I love to hear listeners' feedback like you shared, Sarah. So thank you for that. And I think that's a really good place for us to wrap this particular conversation. And we'll continue the conversation next time.
Thank you for listening to the New Money Habits podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Keeping Up with the Joneses Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our host by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes. Join our growing group of like-minded people on Facebook and follow us on your favorite platform. Music provided by Summer School.